Hi, my name is Jake Nilsson, and thanks for watching this video titled Enabling Disruptive Innovations: How to Leverage Market, Technology, and Industry Trends to Create Your Next Big Idea. So in this presentation, I'm going to go over a end-to-end process for innovation. And really what I mean by that is coming up with a breakthrough or disruptive innovation idea. So the first thing I want to talk about is strategic market, technology, and industry analysis tools. Specifically, we're going to go over cost versus benefit leaders. We'll talk about jobs to be done. As far as technology analysis, we'll go through disruptive innovation theory, and we'll also talk about disruptive enablers. And the last thing is industry analysis, which value chain evolution theory is a fantastic tool for. And then at the end, I will talk a little bit about this theory called integrative innovation, which is something that I've come up with that I think helps explain a breakthrough idea really well in contrast to a disruptive idea. I'll talk more about that. But at the end of this presentation, we'll have all of these combined into an overall end-to-end process for creating your next big idea. So let's get right into it. First of all, it's really important that you have a solid strategy going into new product development. And to help inform that strategy, you can use various analysis tools, such as cost versus benefit leadership, jobs to be done, disruptive innovation, and value chain evolution. Now, specifically, when you're talking about strategy, the first thing you've got to do is pick an approach to your value proposition. What I mean by that is there's really two basic approaches, and Michael Porter's talked about this before, and others have really espoused this idea of there's really two strategies you can pick from, and you can't do both, or it's really hard to do both. Now, the first is benefit leadership. So when you approach a customer, you want to, in a benefit leadership strategy, you want to emphasize the benefits that that customer is going to receive from this product. And typically companies that do this are really good in engineering, design, and marketing. And there's some examples that are on the screen like BMW, Apple, of course, Whole Foods. These are companies that market to people with a value proposition that's all about the benefits. So with BMW, it's all about how great of a driving machine it is. With Apple, it's about the experience you'll have. And with Whole Foods, it's about how healthy you'll be by shopping there and eating the food that they sell. In contrast, you can also be very successful with a cost leadership strategy. And that's where you approach a customer and say, look, we may not have the absolute best thing, but we have the absolute lowest cost thing. And Walmart, Southwest, Amazon, these are fantastic examples of this. Walmart specifically talks about how everyday low prices is their primary value proposition to customers. And typically companies that excel with this strategy are those that do really well with operations, business process, and supply chain. And those are the two main things you want to think about. So going into a new product development, pick a path, try not to do both. And the issue is if you try to do both, you tend to get stuck in the middle. So this is an idea where it's unclear to the customer what your value proposition really is. And this ends up confusing customers, and that is a huge problem. If your customers don't understand where they're benefiting or what their consumer surplus is, then you have a huge barrier to being able to sell. So again, we kind of talked about benefit leaders, and there's cost leaders, and then there's those that are kind of unfocused or stuck in the middle. And unfortunately, some companies have been in this state for quite a while. Sears, for example, it's kind of murky exactly where they stand in terms of benefits or as a cost. Kmart, very similar. Unfortunately, they're the same company. And then Pontiac was a brand that GM killed off because they eventually just felt like this brand is lost any real meaning that it used to have. So that's the first step. Pick a path. And then the second thing you want to think through is analyze your market in terms of people needing to get a job done. So a lot of times we kind of go into new product development thinking, well, we're going to make a better mousetrap. Well, the reality is people may not want, they might not even really care about the mousetrap itself. They just care about catching mice. And so in some cases, that's kind of the job to be done. And in this example, I've got a picture with the hole and the drill bit. Well, when people go to buy drill bits, they don't really care that it's a drill bit that they're buying. What they're buying is the ability to make a hole somewhere. And so that's, in essence, the job to be done, the hole that needs to be created. And it's important when you think through jobs to be done that you look at the entire spectrum of the market. In other words, how do these people who need holes drilled, how do they line up? Because on one end, there's going to be very sophisticated needs. The hole's going to need to be really precise, exact measurements, exact tolerances. And in a lot of cases, the average consumer who needs a hole somewhere is going to just, take relatively imprecise holes, but they'll be all right with the standard products. And then there's the basic users who really just need a hole. They don't care about precision. They don't need all of these inordinate benefits. They just need a hole somewhere. And you can think of products lining up under these specific market segments. So for instance, in the basic user's case, all they want is just a hole, and it doesn't really matter how precise it is, so they can put a jig on top of their cordless drill. Other more average users, they might need some level of precision, and so they'll create or they'll want a drill bit or a drill press. So, and then in other cases, they might even want a full CNC milling machine, which has a lot more precise capabilities. So, to think about this, it's important to think of markets in terms of people plus jobs to be done. And I got to cite Tony Yolwick because he has done a very good job of clarifying this, I think, for people. And what's great is you can view this as a framework for analyzing a market and the products in a market. For instance, over time, people and the distribution of customers actually want or demand more performance for the features that they can get out of these products. And if you line up the products along this type of axis, you can do some really good estimating as to where a market might end up. Now, that brings me to the next analysis tool, which is really brought by Clayton Christensen. So Clayton Christensen wrote a book called The Innovator's Dilemma, and I think it was 10, maybe 15 years ago. And it was a really good breakthrough type of book that helped business leaders frame up products and new product development, and anytime that and how startups were able to disrupt large, really wealthy and capitalized businesses in a matter of sometimes a few years. So this is what he explained. He said, disruptive innovations start at the low end and work their way upward. And you might say, well, why would that work? Well, if you look at this distribution of customers and how their needs adapt over time or evolve over time, you can see that this arrow actually represents a specific product. And typically, like a large company will come out with improvements on that specific product. These are called sustaining innovations. It's what Clayton Christensen calls sustaining innovations. And the incumbents, in this case, these big companies, they sustain their existing business model and meet the needs of the most demanding customers who are willing to pay a premium. So what will happen is these companies, they've started to gain some level of success, and they've gotten a lot of products out there. And then when they're looking for ways to improve that product, they're not going to go to the average Joe who just needs something to make it work, and they'll only pay a little bit. They're going to go talk to the people that are really sophisticated, the customers that need a lot of extra attention and a lot of extra performance for their job to be done. And that's what drives companies into this sustaining innovation mode, where they constantly improve the product in an incremental way. Now, what Christensen argues is disruptive innovations tend to start at the very low end of the market. They come out with something that's very basic. But there's a key difference. It's very basic, but it does one thing really pretty well. And what happens over time is that basic product brought on by the entrant, in this case, they target those people that are being overserved by the incumbent. So these people, the average consumer doesn't need all of that sophistication in the incumbent's product. It's kind of like Microsoft Office. When Google Docs came out, everybody said, well, Google Docs doesn't do near as many things as Microsoft Office does. Well, that's true, but many people didn't need all those things that were in Microsoft Office. And so hence this issue comes up where this basic product comes out and it starts to gain market share. And one thing that's really important about disruptive innovation is you tend to need an enabling technology or business model in order to drive that innovation forth into the rest of the market and to add a lot of improvements. And some examples of this in terms of technologies, these are kind of like a runway for your new business. Could be, the internet's been a huge one, big data, algorithms, learning, machine learning, cloud computing, mobile applications, 4G wireless, high-speed wireless, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Z-Wave, and gigabit fiber internet. All of these are really game-changing technologies that can enable a lot of disruptive innovation. And that's what's happened over and over. But those aren't the only things that can enable disruptive innovation. Other things that act as a runway could be business models. These include things like software as a service, the freemium products or service subscriptions, ad-supported products, direct sales, pay-as-you-go type products. Any type of new business or new way to finance a transaction comes along, there's an opportunity for more innovation. Now, let's take an example. We talked about Microsoft Office, but I'll actually talk about Windows. So Microsoft came out with Windows quite a long time ago, and they constantly improved it over and over and over. And they kept improving it so much that it had features in it that only very few people needed all of those features. Most people just needed basic email, web browser, and maybe some calculator or games. But really it was about email and web browsing. And Google came out with, enabled by cloud computing and software as a service business models, with a new product that was much cheaper. That's called Chromebook and Chrome OS. And the Chromebook essentially did one thing. It was a browser. That was it. That's all it did. And when you buy a Chromebook right now, you'll know exactly what it's like, because if you've ever used the Chrome browser on Windows, it's basically that. Now, the interesting thing about this is those people at the high end are paying anywhere from $800 to $1,500 for their Windows PC. Now, a lot of people didn't need to pay all of that. They're paying for a lot of features that they didn't need. So the Chromebook's case, by removing all those features, can be priced at anywhere from $200 to $400. And what's interesting is that as the Chromebook has progressed, its market share has taken off. And for example, in 2012, the market share for Chromebook laptops was less than 1%. But in 2013, it jumped clear up to 21%. And I haven't looked at the numbers for 2014, but I can only imagine that they've gone up as well. So let's talk about briefly a couple other examples of industries that are about to be disrupted, all of which are enabled by the internet. For instance, there's home security. Home security offers a lot of benefits. There's 24/7 live monitoring. Many times they're anywhere from $40 to $50 a month. And now that's nice, but it's for some people who don't need all of that live monitoring support. They might want to just self-monitor it over the internet for a fraction of the cost. And that's what companies like SmartThings and Canary have built their businesses on. they've been enabled by the internet and or sensors and algorithms to create products that just do one thing. They provide self-monitoring for homes. So instead of the alarm going off and being sent to a central station where someone can dispatch the police or a fire or ambulance, the signal will get sent straight to the customer's smartphone. Now, that's not going to be perfect for every instance, and it's not going to be the best for those most sophisticated or wealthy homeowners who want the full protection. But for a lot of homeowners, that's probably going to be enough. And that's the whole premise behind those. Other examples include cable television. Typically, it costs anywhere from $50 to $90 a month to pay for hundreds of channels, many of which you don't ever use. They're simply over-serving the market with channels and prices that are just not needed. Now, what's great is there were many alternatives come out recently, well, at least in the past 10 years, such as Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, where for anywhere from $7 to $15 a month, you can pay for only what you want. Another example can be education. For instance, if it costs $50,000 for a 4-year degree, well, compare that to potentially less than $10,000 for an online 4-year degree. All of these are industries and examples of disruptive innovation happening today. And it's really interesting to lay this in Christensen's framework because it helps clarify a market. And that's what we want. When we go into an innovation, new product development initiative, we need to have clarity of what is going on in the market in order to be successful. So, this brings me to the next tool that's really important. And this one's called value chain evolution. And this is all about how industries and companies overcome the complexities involved with innovation. So this is really kind of focused more around industries and how they evolve over time. And for instance, I'll give an example. When the Palm Trio came out, it was one of the best smartphones, if not the best smartphone on the market. Now, there were some good competitors like BlackBerry, but the Palm Trio 700 was a really good phone. It did a lot of things. But what's interesting about it is it was a device that was built by numerous different companies. Such as Palm made the hardware, Windows made the software, others made the apps, others did part of the design. And you compare that to when the iPhone came out, it was built essentially by one company, the whole thing, hardware, the software, the apps at first at least. They all were built by Apple, and it started on contract for $500. That is a really expensive phone. But what's interesting is this represents a shift from a previously horizontal industry to which was focused on cost leadership to a vertical industry focused on benefit leadership. And it's really an important implication there. Christensen explains it this way. To improve products, companies often put existing technologies together in new ways, and integrated firms are best suited to coordinate these complexities. So the question is, why wasn't Palm successful like the iPhone? Palm was successful, but they weren't as successful as the iPhone was. Well, part of the issue was since Palm only made the hardware and not the software, they couldn't have them interact as tightly as Apple could. So there was issues with the camera, there was issues with playing video, all sorts of things that came up where one company could have done it much better and provide a lot more value. Now, the thing about this is that this only is relevant for a time, because after this is done, after an initial benefit leader innovation comes out, such as the iPhone, other companies start to wise up and learn exactly what it is they need to do and then drive down costs. And that's exactly what Google did. After the iPhone came out, Google released Android, and they made it so that the software matched, or in some cases even exceeded, the software capabilities of the iPhone. And they allowed third-party hardware developers, or OEMs, hardware makers, to build products using that software and compete effectively with Apple. Now, what that does is, by having all of those different functions done by different parties, it actually enables specialization, which drives down costs a lot. You might think, well, if one company could do it, that could drive down the cost. It's actually the reverse. If many people specialize in their specific portion of a product, that's what really drives out cost. And in this case, we experienced a shift from a vertical type of product or industry to a horizontal. And these happen very quickly in the consumer electronics space. Happens a lot more slowly in other industries. But, for instance, Clayton Christensen said it this way with regards to this shift. And I quote, "To develop products more quickly, companies standardize interfaces between various parts of the product. And these standards eventually allow product architecture to become modular." So that's what ended up happening. As Apple had a vertical structure, and still does, and still competes quite well, Google and Android and third-party OEMs came in with a way to build these devices modularly and have each of the components fit together nicely, just as nice as almost as if they were built by the same company. And that's what you see happen with vertical to horizontal. What's interesting is the price on the Moto G. It's essentially just as good as, arguably as good as many of the iPhones. Maybe not the best iPhone today, but many of the other older iPhones. And it starts at $179 off contract. So free and clear, you can get a Moto G for $179. It's probably even less now. But this is an important point. To underscore this, there's a transition that the industries go through. So before 1980, for instance, in the computer industry, you had materials, components, design, assembly, operating system, applications, sales and distribution. All of those were done by vertically integrated manufacturers, such as IBM, CDC, DEC. And then as other companies entered into the space, such as Intel and Dell and Microsoft and other third-party developers and then third-party distribution networks, it drove a lot of cost out of the personal computer industry and out of the products themselves. But after riding so long on those horizontally created products, it became clear that there was opportunities to provide a lot more value by integrating these different functions into one company again. And that's essentially what Apple did. Now we're starting to see Google doing some of that. Samsung certainly has been doing that. And others are trying to do it as well, including Microsoft, which is coming out with Surface and buying Nokia, which is a phone company. So what's interesting about this process, though, is these are really kind of peaks and valleys in an industry's composition. One goes from vertical to horizontal to back to vertical. And each of these represents a specific strategic direction. In the vertical case, it's all about benefit leadership, providing as much benefits in each product that's possible. And in the horizontal case, it's all about cost leadership, driving out costs, specializing companies and processes to make as low-cost products as possible. And then it kind of goes back into benefit leadership. Now, the important thing about this, though, is Clayton Christensen was very clear and articulate about explaining the transition from vertical industries to horizontal industries. And that's what disruptive innovation theory is all about. It describes that transition beautifully. But what it doesn't describe very well is the other transition, where you go from horizontal industry structure or product structure to vertical industry and product structure. And that's what I'm suggesting as a new theory that describes this. And it's perfectly complementary to the theory of disruptive innovation. And so I'm calling it the theory of integrative innovation. And to give you an overview of this, So we have disruptive innovation. We've kind of talked about it. If you have a big incumbent and they have a very high-priced, high-featured product, it can do everything on the kitchen sink, such as Windows. It can do advanced productivity things, internet communications, and everything else. Everything from 3D gaming to full internet and video editing, etc. Well, if you have a disruptive innovation, you take one of those things, do it really well and really cost effectively, and do away with the others. Now, such as what the Chromebook did by making a very good browser. That's all that thing does. And then in integrative innovation, though, it's the very opposite. You take three things that are separate or disparate, the three jobs to be done, essentially, and you combine them together. And this is really important because when Steve Jobs announced the iPhone, he announced it actually as three different products at first. And then his big punchline was, do you get it? This is not three different products. This is one product that does three things. It's an iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. And that's the theory of integrative innovation, integrating multiple jobs to be done into one device and providing a lot more benefit. So, let's explore this a little bit more with the iPhone. For instance, the iPhone has always been an anomaly to the classic disruptive innovation theory by Clayton Christensen. And it came to a head in 2007 when Christensen actually predicted the iPhone would fail. And he said in these quotes, Apple won't succeed with the iPhone. The probability of success is going to be limited. So we all know where that prediction ended up. It was wrong. But when you look at it from the framework of disruptive innovation theory, it actually makes sense why he said that. The reason is because in the middle of the market in 2005, 2006, you had Nokia and in some cases BlackBerry and others. But these were the heart of the market and they sold a lot. And what Christensen was suggesting is that the iPhone is just a sustaining innovation over and above those, and that it's only going to appeal to a small segment of ultra-premium users. Now, we all know that the actual outcome was very different. It didn't just appeal to a very small segment of premium users. It actually appealed to a very large segment of users. At first, it was premium users, though, but it was very large, and it continued to grow. And so it was a big anomaly to this theory, and Christensen actually later addressed it. They asked him, well, how come you were wrong? And he said, well, I thought about it more, and I really wasn't wrong. I was just framing it in the wrong way. He was framing the iPhone as a sustaining innovation to other phones when he really thinks that the iPhone is a disruptive innovation to other devices such as laptops and computers that can do a lot more than an iPhone. But the iPhone is starting out as kind of a basic computer, and then it'll grow. Now that's fully understandable, and it makes a lot of sense as well. The trouble is when you're a product manager or an engineering manager or a CEO and you're trying to think through this framework, it's really difficult to extrapolate into other markets as to what you might become a disruptor for. It's just really hard to do. Trust me, I've tried it, and it's not a practical way to analyze a market when you're trying to build a premium product. So when I was faced with this conundrum a few years ago, I came to this realization that something else fundamentally is going on. And integrative innovation tries to explain the iPhone and other products that are similar to the iPhone success with reference to their base market. So with reference to the phone market, I'm a product manager who knows phones. I want to build I want to build the next iPhone. So that's what you can think of as integrative innovation. The way it does it is simple. You have, at first, you'll have the set of customers. So your basics and your average customers and your sophisticated customers. And they follow that general trend that the disruptive innovation theory suggests. But there's an important thing that happens with integrative innovation. They'll actually, this is kind of following this disruptive theory where you have a product, and Christensen's prediction was that the iPhone would just appeal to a very small segment of users, and that's where he was wrong. But what ended up happening is there was a big shift in the market. I'll explain this. When you combine storing and organizing and listening to music, that as one job to be done, which, by the way, people paid about $200 for just that job. And then internet communication, which people paid money for it, although at the time there's not a clear internet communicator by itself, so it's embedded in other functions within the laptop. But then there's obviously also voice communication, which in the Nokia's case, people would pay up to $200, $300 with a 2-year contract just for that one device, and that essentially that one job to be done. Now it did other jobs, but it didn't do them very well. And so the interesting thing about integrative innovation is when you combine all of these jobs to be done together in a way that is simple, easy to use, just as easy, in fact, as it would be as if you had a dedicated device to that. If you can integrate those all into one device in that simple way, you'll create a shift in the market. And that's the point of integrative innovation. What happens is the performance acceptable to the market has now shifted upwards, because you're not just looking at one job to be done. You've now combined multiple jobs to be done and had an additive effect on the value given to the consumer. And so they're all added together. And essentially what happened is the iPhone was smack dab in the middle of that upper half of the market. And that's why it took off so fast, because there wasn't just 1/30th or 1/20th of the market that was interested in it. It was actually up to 1/3 of the entire market. And that's what we kind of see them as maybe around 1/4 to 1/3 in terms of market share. But what's really interesting thing about this is that you take the iPhone and you come out with it and it's really premium and everybody knows that. And then you start to look at what are ways you can add more value. So you can add more value, but if you keep doing that over time, you will get yourself right out of the market. You'll add so many features and so many benefits that people won't be willing to pay for them anymore. So integrative innovation is essentially the opposite of, or inverse of, disruptive innovation. Instead of constantly going up and up and up and up, which you do probably want to do that anyway, just because you'll have opportunities and because people's demand continues to go up. But the key idea is to go down market. You want to go down market as fast as possible. Bring out cost, make it affordable, and penetrate the market segments that are beneath where your current product appeals to. And that's what iPhone has been doing this very well. Their initial strategy was to reduce the price on the previous generation models, which worked magnificently well, and it was also a very inexpensive way for them to do it. And then they also come out with products like the iPhone 5C, which is a low-cost product that appeals to emerging markets and also lower priced price points. And so this is the whole heart of integrative innovation. And what's great about it is it explains the iPhone success. It does it in a way that makes sense from the base market. You notice what happened is in the beginning there was the Nokia, and if Nokia had just continued to go along that path without stepping up to where the iPhone was, they're going to be only appealing to the very bottom of the market. And the market will actually shift right up away from them. But by building the iPhone, Apple integrated all of this value into one device, created an additive effect on the market, and made it possible for many people to even afford such a high performance product. So integrating multiple jobs in a way that allows consumers to accomplish those jobs simply is the key. And again, it must be done simply, because I'm reminded of my Trio. I actually had the Trio that I talked about earlier, and it could do video, it could do camera, and it could do music, it could do all of this stuff that the iPhone did, but it did it terribly. I mean, it was awful. The way you go to a browser and it just had this weird way of reformatting the pages. It just looked terrible. But when the iPhone came out, it was almost the same as if you were looking at it from a desktop. You could pull up the entire browser screen and you could zoom right in on it, and it was really easy to zoom, and that's the point of it. You can't just glom all of these features in together and say, oh, we've got an integrative innovation. The point is you have to do it, you have to integrate these in such a way that it is just as easy to use that feature within your integrative innovation as it is to use that or to get that benefit from a dedicated device that provides that feature. So that's what's really important. Now, Apple, I think, is the king of these types of innovations. And another example is the iPod. There were really three key jobs to be done that they integrated. First one was listening to music, second one was storing music, and the third was organizing music. As they integrated all of these jobs to be done into one device, which was much more premium, much higher benefit than a Discman or a Walkman or this Diamond Rio thing that was one of the early MP3 players. All of those jobs that were integrated together added the value to where the market shifted completely, and it left all the competitors kind of bottom feeders now. Only people that were interested in them were the very most basic customers. But the great part about it is they didn't just stay up at the top. They went down market as fast as possible. They brought out the iPod Nano, which was, by the way, their most successful iPod. And then even after that, they came out with the iPod Shuffle, which sold for $100, just as much as many of the other lower-priced MP3 players were. It was a little more expensive because it's Apple, but they were definitely competitive with many of the other lower-tier products. So, in summary, I want to provide a process for creating disruptive or integrative ideas. So the first thing that needs to be done to do this is customer analysis. And the best tool I've found for that is the Jobs to be Done framework. And coupled with the idea that there's a distribution of customers and their needs. Not all needs for the job are the same, but the job itself is the same. And so the first question is, are your customers overserved or are they underserved? The answer to that question is vital to your new product development success. I've experienced it myself. And then the second thing is business analysis. What is your business really good at? Are people really good at marketing, engineering, design, creativity? If so, your best bet is probably benefit leadership. However, if your core competencies are really more around process, cost containment, supply chain, those types of things, then your best bet could be to be a cost leader. Now, these aren't hard, set, fast rules, but they do provide some good guidance as to what you should do in creating a new product. And then the third thing is, what are the new enablers that are relevant to you and your business and the job to be done by your customers? For example, what are the new technologies that can help you? What are the new business models or ways of providing value that you could implement in conjunction with your product or service? And then the fourth thing is, what is your industry doing? What's the trend? Because this can be a huge indicator, albeit a lagging indicator, of where you need to go. And for instance, is your industry trending from vertical, where all of the companies do most of the piece of the value chain, into horizontal, where it's being broken up and a lot of low-end disruptive innovations are coming in with products that are solely focused on one job to be done, and yet they'll gradually improve on those? Or is your company trending from a horizontal company where many of the companies did their own piece of the value chain into a vertical industry where companies are acquiring a lot and they're trying to build a lot of value into one product that's done by one team? If that's happening, then your best bet probably is going to be a high-end or integrative innovation. And it's likely that you'll have underserved customers wanting higher performance solutions. So it's important to think through these things and think, what innovation strategy is ideal for your customers and your industry? And then finally, as you come up with this picture of the market and your industry and your customers, then the last thing is brainstorm ideas. Use many of the ideation tools that are out there, and I've got many on my website. Connecting the Dots, Innovation at the Verge, Systematic Innovation Thinking, Scamper, Analogical Thinking Method, Blue Ocean Strategy. All of these can help your creativity come to life. And as you have this background understanding of what the market is doing and what your customers want and what your industry is doing, what technology is trending towards, that will help facilitate your ideation process so that you come up with ideas that are relevant and potentially big. So I guess to end this presentation, the question is how will you disrupt or shift your market? You'll either disrupt them with a low-end innovation and go after those that are overserved, or you'll shift the market and go after all those customers that are really underserved and also would like more value to be added together into one comprehensive product. Okay, so we've reached the end of this video. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to email me. My email is jake@theinnovativemanager.com. I love getting comments, love getting questions, appreciate your time. Please reach out to me. It's a fantastic experience for me to help out, consult, advise, or get feedback of any kind. If you disagree, let me know. I'd love to hear it from you. So I think it's great to discuss these and come up with the best solution. And that's all, folks. Thanks for hanging out, and I appreciate your time, and good luck on your innovation efforts. Take care.